Hello, this is Jenny Clark with Solvability, and today's Freedom Friday. We're so excited because we've got a pretty big crowd on for today. We just had an update from Emily Harmon about what's going on in NDIA, National Defense Industrial Association discussions, and we'll be posting that to the notes afterward. Today I'm so excited because our guest is Carol Ann Dykes with the University of Central Florida Business Incubation Program. And Carol Ann really has her fingers in a lot of pots because she's been active in the community of simulation and training in the greater Orlando plus the Space Coast activity for quite some time. So what we typically do is I bring Carol on, let her talk a little bit about what's up in her life and what's up in their world. And Carol Ann, would you take it away?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jenny. And thank you to everybody that's joining us today. I am a visual person, therefore I do have some slides I'm going to share. Feel free to interrupt, ask questions as we go along. It'll be pretty brief here, but my objective is to give you just a very general picture of what we are doing at UCF, how we are organized to support entrepreneurs, early stage innovation companies like yours in particular, and talk a little bit about just some of the benefits of and value to you of particularly partnering with a university like the University of Central Florida, if you haven't already. I like to toss that slide in there because I find a lot of companies haven't necessarily explored the benefits and the value of partnering with a university, but we have a lot of assets, resources we provide beyond that too.
Well, Carol Ann, I'm so glad that you talked about the University of Central Florida and how big it is. And for people that haven't been to Orlando area, to the UCF campus, her office is right on the campus. And when you look around, it's like you're completely surrounded by this giant island of technology, right, Carol Ann?
Technology and military acquisition, I will say. Some of you know, for those of you who don't, we here in Orlando in the Central Florida Research Park next to UCF are the home of the Department of Defense military's simulation and training acquisition commands. Most of it, all of the Navy, all the Marine Corps is here, a big chunk of the Army, including Army Futures Command, has their STI, Synthetic Training Environment Command here, and then the Air Force is also here. So we actually have a Navy base next to the university. So we do a lot of work with defense industrial base in particular. Now I have this slide up here, innovation and incubation for government contractors. That's who you are, and we work with a lot of you, particularly the smaller companies who we're supporting actively day to day. But for those of you that are with larger companies, we work with you as well because we have a whole stable and community of fabulous smaller companies that could partner with you and be subcontractors to you, maybe be primes on small business set-asides, just all sorts of relationships, as you know, that can be beneficial between large small businesses in the defense world. Our innovation districts, which I'm going to share a little bit more of, is a fairly new development for us. This is a strategy where over the last couple of years we have carved out 3 areas, geographic areas of Metro Orlando community, anchored around our 3 main campuses. Yes, we have 3 main campuses at UCF, our largest out by the Research Park, our downtown campus, and our health sciences campus. We have other smaller campuses around, but those 3 in particular are co-located already, have been with some of our most active incubators that were already very technology centric. And very importantly, in defining these innovation districts, what we identified and realized was the campuses and the incubators are in the midst of existing and emerging clusters of innovation and industry that are the economic drivers of Central Florida really and beyond, but certainly Metro Orlando. Here's a little bit of an overview or clarification about what those innovation districts are and where they are. You can see some of the key industry and technology innovation sectors that are clustered around there. That doesn't mean that all of the defense and military industry, related industry, is resident right in around the research park, that's just where the bulk of it is, the anchor, the core of it tends to be, not only because of the acquisition activity here, which is about $7 billion this year, but because of the corporate presence that is here, the research that goes on at the university. That's the other thing, in all these industry and technology sectors that you see, they're very aligned with areas of really deep and growing strength of research and development at UCF, as well as in the industrial.
Well, Carol Ann, that is so important what you're talking about, because when I first visited Orlando, I just looked around the research park area, and I could see what it is. But everything that we're seeing in growth in technology is about simulation being used in all different types of industry. Absolutely. And here you've got life sciences and the other thing I didn't really understand with Orlando is it's like you got to give people a reason to drive across town. So having those clusters really means that everybody you need, you can walk out your door where you're sitting, and within a mile you're at one of the big Navy and Army, you can sit in a contracting officer's office, correct?
That's true, absolutely. Oftentimes they're coming over to our incubators as well, the PMs and the contracting officers. And to expand on that point, Jenny, while that community within the innovation districts and around those clusters is really, really important, it's also very important for us that we continue to build more active bridges between the clusters. So, for example, we're all familiar, those of us on this call, with how active DoD in particular is, as well as Homeland Security, in putting initiatives in place to reach out to the non-traditionals, right? We've got all these OT consortium, we've got tech bridges under Naval X, we've got all sorts of things going on. Well, a lot of those companies, they're in our downtown innovation district, or they're in our health sciences innovation district. There are companies there that have never even, they look at all this list of acronyms and these program names, and they're like, I don't want to deal with that. I'm commercial, I'm moving fast, I'm doing leading edge innovation. But that's what our program managers and our acquisition officers, what our military want. So part of our strategy and part of what we are getting increasingly involved in is helping bring a much broader community of those smaller companies to the big companies, the primes, as well as to the military commands themselves.
Well, Carol Ann, that's such a great point that one of the things that I think is fascinating is you've got pockets of the gaming community. And of course, when they're trying to train young airmen, young soldiers, young Marines, they're wanting to apply technology because they can move people in there faster. And what's amazing to me is there is both federal money and some commercial or private money that's available to fund all of these things, but you're like the person that knows where to find the path, right?
Right. That's what I'm here to do, really, is to make these connections, help people figure out how to. Sometimes I'm a translator, especially when I'm reaching out to these companies, as Jenny said, in the commercial gaming space, because, for example, EA Sports, which does all the Madden football games and a lot of their big titles, their gaming studio is here. This is where they develop all that stuff. And then we've got Disney and Universal and SeaWorld and all the theme parks that are doing extraordinary work in extended reality and gamification and simulation. So there's this interesting convergence of all these different industry sectors that bring a lot of talent here. We produce a lot of talent out of UCF and Full Sail University, and getting people to raise their head up and recognize that there's some interesting people for them to talk to is a big part of what we do. And related to that, some of you are familiar with the growing use of partnership intermediary agreements, particularly in the Department of Defense, that have been used to stand up entities like SoftWorks, AFWorks, T-Rex here. So a lot of different initiatives that are funded under PEOs. UCF, we have just signed a PEO with the Naval Air Warfare Center Training Systems Division here, and partnering with them are PEO-STRI, AFEMS, which is the Air Force Modeling and Simulation Command here, as well as PM-Trasys, which is the Marine Corps Simulation Acquisition Group. So all four of those entities are part of this partnership intermediary agreement with UCF. We are in the very beginning stages of standing up this initiative, which will enable us to run a lot of programming, a lot of activities, a lot of initiatives for collaboration and networking and education and getting problems that they have here in the Team Orlando commands out to the broader community nationally, and particularly reach not only across our innovation districts, Jenny, but across the country to tap those innovative companies that can solve those problems.
Well, Carol Ann, I think that what you're talking about is so interesting, because one of the issues with innovation is how long it takes. And they'll give examples of like, hey, we found this new technology, and by the time we can bring it on board, that person will be retired. Exactly. So what UCF and other groups are doing is you're creating facilitation activity, because for an individual small business owner to go find money to develop something that could save soldiers' lives or whatever is very difficult. And what you're really doing is saying, because of our partnership intermediary agreement, we've got our doors open for connecting a lot of those dots. And as a university, you're great at that.
Wow, that's what we've long done just in our incubator program in general, whether it's helping make our companies that have been strictly commercially focused. A lot of times it's just making them aware that, you know, you're solving this problem over here for some other industry. It really could be used over here with some modifications or further development to solve this problem for the military. And here's an OT opportunity, or here's an SBIR opportunity. So whatever that avenue might be. And speaking of our incubators,
just a quick comment,
yes,
quick question here. So
yes,
when it comes to criteria, is that you're looking for is a company that has an idea, something they can make a contribution to, or how are you selecting or identifying the companies that will be able to participate in the incubators?
Thank you. Did somebody pay you for that segue, Russ? So, yeah. So just briefly, our incubation program, these are the major categories of service and support that we provide to our incubator clients. We have 8 physical incubator facilities, 4 of them which are very tech-centric. Those 4 are in those innovation districts, so you have to fit in one of those technology industry categories we looked at earlier to be in those. And we have space, office, lab space, as well as, very importantly, what makes us an incubator is all these other services. But to your question, Russ, when an entrepreneur comes to us, they have to have more than just an idea. An idea is not a company, it's an idea. So we are onboarding into our incubation program those early stage companies that have gone through enough of a thought and analysis and market discovery process to be able to articulate, this is the problem I'm solving, here's who has the problem, here's what my customer looks like, and here's what I think is going to make sense, how I'm going to get it to market and what I'm going to need. Now, they're not going to know all those answers, but we need to see that they've taken advantage perhaps of our small business development centers, our procurement technical assistance centers, maybe some of the early stage accelerator programs we have in town, or we do have a program we call pre-incubation, that if a young company comes to us, they've just gotten started, it's one or a handful of really bright founders, and it's like, okay, you know, that sounds like it's got a lot of potential, and you've got great background, very relevant experience to what you're embarking on, but you're not really ready for the incubator program because there's still a lot of questions you need to answer about who, what, why, and how much. So we will bring those folks into our pre-incubation program and spend about 6 months taking them through a structured process with some great tools and worksheets and decision tools that enable them to get a lot of those questions answered. It also gives us a chance to get a really good feel for how coachable they are. Because that's one of the things we really look for too, the job creation potential, the intent and desire to really scale a company, and then will they really take help? Lots of people say they want help, but then taking it and thoughtfully considering it is another thing. So does that answer your question?
I'm sure that it does.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And
Thank
Carol Ann, what's always fascinating to me is whenever I do come over to Orlando and walk through your offices, I just get so excited seeing all of the companies that have a physical location there. But I also realize that you've even got remote capability. So there's people that are part of your incubation that aren't in office space.
Right.
How many companies do you help every year? Have you ever counted it up?
Well, on average, across all of our incubator facilities, we stay right around 135 to 140 active clients at any time. Now, the goal of an incubator program, obviously, is to bring them in, help them get through that first stage as a business, and then graduate them out, which means they've reached a point where they've got product and service in the market, they've got some sustainable revenue. I find it usually means there's at least 3 layers in the org chart. The CEO's being a CEO and not still doing all the work. There's somebody in between the CEO and the rest of the staff. That's really a key pivot point for a company to be able to graduate. But there's an event that happens that necessitates them moving out into their own commercial space. That's what graduation is. So whether it's getting a substantial contract, being acquired, which we have a lot of that go on, but they're ready to move on into the next stage of business.
So they're not all physical. So they're not all physically located.
95% of them are, yes. Yeah. So for example, our research park incubator, which is our largest, is 50,000 square feet of space with a number of wet labs. Our life sciences incubator, we have bio labs down there. So most are physically on site, which actually is there's a lot of talk about being able to operate virtually as a company, and everybody's had to learn to do that, right? And there are some great advantages to that. For really young companies though, Russ, who have not had sufficient time to really establish their corporate culture, their communication patterns and habits, really get to know each other well enough to know who can function well remotely and who can't. Being together, physically together, and being part of a community of peers, of other entrepreneurs, has such a intangible value to it. Plus, if you're physically here, when Captain Hill from NAWCTSD comes over, or the CO from STRI, or program manager from STI, or somebody from Raytheon comes in the door, the BD guy, whatever, because these folks are in and out of here a lot. You're here, I can take them down the hall and say, there's somebody I really need to introduce you to based on this conversation we just had, right? So
well, it sure makes it easier for you to connect people because of that. One of the other things I wanted to ask you about, you've mentioned OTs and you've mentioned SBIRs, and for people that aren't familiar, can you just kind of run through some of the ways that SBIR program has helped people?
Oh my goodness, yes. So just, I'm not going to give you the SBIR tutorial. I'm going to assume that either everybody on the call knows a little bit about it, or if you don't, go to SBIR.gov, which is the official Small Business Administration website for this program. But it is absolutely the best and small business set-aside research and development funding program that the federal government's ever created. There are 12 federal agencies that participate in this program. Anyway, I could get into a lot of detail, but how does it help small businesses? It is almost impossible to find avenues to acquire capital that fund research and development, and particularly that development piece of it. So the SBIR program, because it is crafted to identify very legitimate existing problems that exist either within a federal agency like DoD, or in an industry that a federal agency serves, for example, Department of Energy, they support the energy industry, right? So they've identified problems that need to be solved, and they're giving small, innovative companies the opportunity to submit proposals and get funding to develop solutions. It has absolutely been one of the most critical resources for many of our companies in our incubators to partner with those federal agencies and get funding to develop products and services that strategically they were going to pursue anyway. It just happened that this was a partner and a program that enabled them to do that. Just to put it in perspective, in fact, I just pulled this data yesterday for another reason, Jenny. In the last 3 years, FY 17, 18, and 19 of the SBIR and the sister program, the STTR program, incubator companies and graduates attached to the UCF program secured $31 million of funding, research and development funding. And that's just our incubator companies and graduates.
Wow. And that's just doing your regular, consistent job and creating those opportunities and nurturing people around so they don't have to wander around blindly. They can just reach out and connect to you and people like you that help find the resources. What I love about the SBIR program, Small Business Innovative Research Program, is it's got multiple phases, the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And it allows people to really start with a white paper kind of level and then move forward. So what's your favorite story to tell about an SBIR win, Carol Ann?
Oh my goodness. Gosh. Should have asked me that, given me time to think about that question. I have so many.
Well, let's just talk about a mega grant.
A mega grant like SimBlocks just got.
Yeah, exactly. I was so excited because one of the people in Carol Ann's incubator, Jordan Dobble, won a mega grant, and I'm always fascinated to hear him talk.
So Jordan's a great example. He's had an SBIR before too, Air Force SBIR. So Jordan is in the defense modeling and simulation space. He developed, bootstrapped on his own, this very unique platform that enables the military to take existing simulation and training products that are somewhat legacy products and infuse into them commercial gaming engine functionality. So much more rapid evolution of a legacy product without having to completely start over and redevelop it necessarily.
Plus it's got built-in upgrades when he does it that way, right? Every time there's a new feature?
Absolutely. But the mega grant that Jenny's referring to, yeah, we're very excited for Jordan. Epic Games, which is the developer and provider of Unity, one of the most widely used game engines in the world out there. They actually run a grant program that they fund companies to develop applications on Unreal, their game engine, obviously. And Jordan was, I'm not going to say fortunate, smart enough, to pursue one of those. He just got a $250,000 grant to develop a new game on Unity, and it will be for the military. So we're very excited for him.
Well, the good thing about it is I think a lot of it is determination. It's also making sure that you are in the place with people around you that can support you. So, and
that you understand the market, that you can, because you have to demonstrate a legitimate need in the market for any of these SBIR mega grants, any of it. Yes, ma'am.
That's great. Yeah. So Carol Ann, as we wrap up, I just love it if you could give people information about how to contact you, and that would be great.
There we go.
Okay. So Carol Ann is at carolann.dykes, D-Y-K-E-S, Logue, L-O-G-U-E, at UCF.edu. And you can probably Google her and find her, or you can call me.
Just go to Incubate, just look for Incubator UCF and our website will pop up and we're all on there. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for being with us today, Carol Ann, and we look forward to seeing some more and hearing more from your group.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody.
All right, thank you, everybody.